And we are back. And if you're joining us now, we are just getting our first conversation started. We are speaking all about the upcoming elections on November 11th. And here to join us for this morning's discussion, we have the great pleasure of having the leader-elect of the United Democratic Party, Minister Patrick Faber. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Gavin. And good morning, Belize.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And on Tuesday, we spoke with the leader of the People's United Party. And I'm going to start the discussion off with the same question that we asked him to begin with, that since the announcement of the election date was made, how is it that you're feeling going into the elections, being that they're just over 1 month away?
Well, it's always an exciting feeling moving on to an election. This will be my fifth general election that I'll be contesting. And so it's like Christmas when you know Christmas is coming and you have to make all these great preparations, but it brings its own adrenaline, you know. So for me, it's a very exciting time. And of course, I get to face off in this one in a different way. In my capacity as leader of the party. I've assisted in our party's campaigns in various different capacities over time as the chairman and as the deputy leader. And well, actually, no, I've not had a general election as deputy leader, but smaller elections, municipal elections, and so on. And so this time around, that's the difference. And, you know, a lot more responsibility lies in my hands this time around in terms of securing the victory. And so for me, that's exciting.
Yeah, 2020 makes everything feel like it's so long ago, but it's only been 4 months since you have been elected as the party leader. And in fact, it was the second leadership convention to be held in this year alone. Now, one of the first things on your agenda, and it was very much a message coming out of the party at that time, was that there was a need for unification. It was a very divisive back-to-back convention, and you had to get everyone back on the same page to prepare for this date that we now know is going to be November 11th. How would you say you're doing with that?
I am very happy about the unification efforts. The conventions for us are a must. So we believe in democratically selecting our candidates where it is possible, except if there is some kind of extreme situation. But we more importantly believe in democratically selecting our leadership. And when those conventions become due, we try our best to make sure that they happen. And so, yes, they bring a level of divisiveness, but it is all in an effort to try to exercise as best as we can the democracy of the party. Yes, sides are drawn and things happen and things are said during these conventions that sometimes makes it harder for us to pull together once the conventions are over. But I am very pleased to say that we have been able to, in very surprisingly quick manner, unite the party. I believe we have everybody on board now. I can confidently say that, and we are ready and able and willing to push forward. It's like when you have some kind of quarrel in your family and, you know, things go aside, but then when you have a big event, everybody comes together, everybody knows and plays their role. And that is exactly what is going to happen for these elections. We're going to make sure that the party is stronger than ever. In fact, we're there, but it keeps building. Yeah. And we're going to make sure that on election day, we deliver the majority of the seats for our party once again.
Yeah. You know, going into the leadership convention, as you clearly stated, there were quite a bit of I guess, insults hurled at the opposing campaigns. And one that we heard being said about you was that you were sensitive about trivial matters. And in fact, yesterday, we had the story about you getting into a social media quarrel with the president of the teachers union. Now, when you look at your leadership, and I think you used the term last night, that you felt you were easily baited. Looking forward, acknowledging that that's perhaps not behavior that people see becoming of a leader, what are you working on personally so that you can change that perspective?
Well, we're all human beings, as you know. I didn't use the word easily baited. I said I allowed myself to be baited, and all of us go through things like that. We're human beings. I did say that given the season, the election season that we're in now, that this is going to happen more often than ever before. And in fact, as the party in government, as a party that has been in government for 3 consecutive terms, we are the target for the opposition who is so hungry for power, for those third party or independent candidates. We are the target. And so some people describe it as it's open political season. Some people call it silly season. But it is that we are being targeted because we have everything to lose and everybody has everything else to gain. So my regret was that I was baited into that. But I think people understand that we're human beings. And my apologies or my regrets was that I allowed that to happen. But the situation and the circumstance that drew us to that, drew me to that, I have no regrets about. And I'm glad that you raised that, Marlene, because I wanted to make clear that the situation was brought about, of course, because my mother, Elizabeth Brown Pott, was brought into the situation. I thought that was very distasteful on the part of the president of the BNTU, but I'm not here to rehash the situation. I am merely saying that that situation came about because, in my view, and those who know the president know that, in fact, that was well her intention, to draw out that situation and to criticize. My mother, as I've said, has been a long-standing educator in the early childhood field. The government undertook to build 22 new primary schools via the Ministry of Education's loan project with the Caribbean Development Bank. We decided on naming these 22 preschools of former educators or retired educators, which my mom happens to be one. There are others that are being named after nationally recognized teachers. It just so happens that the one in Kamalota was selected for the name of my mother. This has nothing to do with me trying to impose a name. And in fact, if the people in Kamalota, as I've said, wanted something different, that could have been and still can be determined. So, like I said, it's a season for people trying to create issues, trying to attack the government. But that has never been my style in leadership. So I look forward to resolving those issues and for us to move on to more important issues like the elections coming up and where we're going to go in terms of getting out of the very big issues, problems, if you will, that we're having as a result of COVID-19 and other predicaments that are sure to follow in terms of governing.
And Minister Faber, since we brought up the BNTU, of course, you as the Minister of Education have had at times a somewhat, let's say, a tempestuous relationship with the BNTU, with several issues coming to the forefront, several let's say impasses that have been met with and several comments being made on either side. What would you say to people who question your leadership style or your role as a leader when, for example, the union, which falls under your ministry, you've been at odds with them so publicly, and some people may question your ability to negotiate or, be an effective leader for the country, knowing that all these issues have been happening within your own ministry?
I think that is, I'm glad you raised that because it's a misconception. There has never been a situation with the BNTU that is within the realm of the power of the Ministry of Education that has not been resolved. I ask anybody to show me where that has been the case. Whenever there is the kind of impasse that you speak about, Gavin, it is always because the BNTU will have some larger national agenda which the Ministry of Education cannot solve, or they have some kind of agenda with a financial implication, which the Ministry of Education cannot solve and does not decide on its own. Every other issue related to education that comes under the direct purview of the Ministry of Education has been resolved with the with the BNTU. And that's factual. I ask anybody to find me an issue. And in fact, it allows me to make the point that the relationship between the government and teachers has been one that has been very beneficial to teachers in this country. Under the watch of this administration, we've seen teachers in the primary school level, for instance, move from 30% trained teachers to about 85% trained teachers in this country. And most of that training that causes teachers to have more, get more salary, if you will, get a larger salary, comes at the cost or came at the cost of the taxpayers and came as a result of the government's initiatives. Yeah. So there have been tremendous benefits. We have seen the salary adjustments as well that have gone to teachers as well as other public servants. There have been tremendous benefits that has come from that relationship. Does it mean that it was always smooth sailing in terms of our negotiations and discussions? No. And for me, that is something that yields good positive results. If we get into meetings and we started singing Kumbaya on every topic, then we could never have possibly gotten to some of the wonderful decisions that we've gotten to. Take, for instance, teacher licensing. Take, for instance, the formation of the Teaching Service Commission that governs the service of all of these things are good things that came out of our negotiations. So those who try to paint a negative picture really do an injustice and don't take all things into consideration. And that's what I believe people will look at the end of the day and know that there has been tremendous work that came because of my leadership of the Ministry of Education, but also because we have a good, strong government that is geared towards assisting our teachers, making sure that there is an improvement in quality, in access to education, and that has been our watchword. They can say a lot of things negative, but the truth is we've moved milestones in terms of education in this country, and we will continue to move milestones as we now venture into the technological era of education, something that we have long encouraged but was more slow-paced, and now maybe by force, you will say, we've now had to pick up the pace, but it takes us into a brand new era in the education sector.
Literally by a force of nature, no? But yes. I think this is an interesting point, because going into this election as now the leader, as you'll be the leader as of tonight, of the incumbent party means that, quite frankly, you carry the weight of the performance of the party, even though you weren't at the helm. So any past errors, any shortcomings within other ministries that you were not the head of, allegations of corruptions of other persons within the party are all questions and concerns that you will now have to address, especially within the next month. And that's a completely different situation from a third party or even the opposition, because they've not been the ruling administration.
Absolutely.
So how prepared are you to be able to speak up or speak against some of the things that people have been unhappy about with the administration's decisions and things that have unfolded in the past?
Well, the wonderful thing about an election is that, or a democratic process, is that people get to decide. And so we are at a point now, people might have been unhappy, let's say, all parts of a 5-year term, yeah. any other part of a 5-year term. But when we get to the end like this, people will have the ultimate say and they will decide. And so for me, it is to try to convince the electorate, the masses of this country, that the UDP overall has done a good job over the time that they've been in office. And it actually, it's not the overall time that we've been in an office that we would have to focus on. We got a new mandate in 2012. We got a renewed mandate again in 2015. And so it is now to convince people that we've been good stewards of the country between 2015 and now. And it is not to say, Marlene, that as the leader, that I will defend and I will paint a rosy picture that everything has been perfect. Nothing in terms of leadership can always be 100% perfect. But what matters is that we're able to reflect on what was done. In terms of my own leadership, build on what legacy Prime Minister Dean Barrow has left, and then try to improve on that. We're not throwing away the baby with the bathwater here. We're reflecting, we're doing introspection, we're looking at what may have gone wrong, what can be improved, what the new leadership style of Patrick Faber will bring, because that's the question. People look at the UDP now and say, well, we know what a UDP under Dean Barrow will look like, but what will a UDP under Patrick Faber look like? And there are some who look at the negative things that have happened under the last administration and say, well, yeah, that was Faber. Well, Faber at the helm may mean something different, not taking away anything from the leadership style of our very successful outgoing party leader, but building on things that are good and putting in new vision and new ideas to take the party forward, and then also to take the country forward.
So then let's tackle one of the biggest issues. And I know it becomes just a buzzword that carries very little meaning. Well, great significance, but I think people are very skeptical when we talk about it. But the situation of corruption within government is one that persistently comes up. And of course, you know that after 3 terms, everyone still reflects on when Prime Minister Barrow, when he was running at the time, spoke of the machete that he would use to chop out any corruption. And, you know, the words are now used against him. What's your platform on corruption going in? I mean, no nonsense is no nonsense. And while everyone says it, how will you do it?
Well, I think action is the most direct way to show that is the case. You know, unlike what the opposition has proposed, I think that there are good many systems in place to curb corruption now. There probably is more to do and more mechanisms that you can put in place. But by and large, we have these mechanisms in place. We have signed on to the Anti-Corruption Convention. We have an Integrity Commission. We have all of these things in place. But for some reason, we've not been able to put them into full effect. And that may have to do with political will. And if that is the case, I take that on very seriously and make my commitment that the will be there to ensure that things go correctly. But I want to caution people, and this is something that I have said that has been taken out of context many, many times, that corruption does not only affect or is carried out by politicians. Some people make the 2 terms synonymous, politicians and corruption. And corruption means everybody practically is going to have to change the way they do things. And that is one of the primary reasons, in my view, why it's so hard to find the political will to get that kind of change needed, because people will have to understand that by and large, we will have to change the way in which we do things in this country. And I think that it is the right way to go. It's not that I'm saying we can't go down that road. In fact, I want to go down that road. And we have to send that signal strongly that we believe that this can happen, that we are, in fact, firstly in my party, that we are the party of anti-corruption. If we have lost our moorings in some way in that regard, we have to get back to it. And in that regard, I say that human nature, there are people who come into any organization, even born into a family, that sometimes departs from what that family holds and values to be true, but we get back to basics. And for us in the party, and certainly under my watch, where it is that we have departed from those moorings, we will ensure that we get back on track. And I'm pretty sure that when you look at my own record as a government minister, you will see that that kind of corruption that people fear, especially from politicians, is not the kind of engagement that I tolerate at all. In fact, I've prided myself in my actions and my history in the Ministry of Education that causes me to be able to say to people, I want to be the leader of this nation. Firstly, I had to say to my party, I want to be the leader of this party so that we're able to move things along in an open and transparent way within the party, and then by extension for the government of our country.
What type of measurable outputs would you put on what would be your anti-corruption platform? I agree with you. I think that on paper, there are a lot of great oversight mechanisms in place. But when executed, it's not done where they can properly function. You know, you look at resourcing institutions adequately, making appointments that are genuinely autonomous. You know, even things like declaring your assets before you go into office. Have you informed your representatives that it'll be something that will be carried out from this point forward? So how do we look for the actions that you speak of? What is your plan?
Well, first, let me say that the kind of thing that you spoke about just now is not encouraged by the party, and has never been encouraged by the party. Declaring of assets, for instance, it is something that the current party leader and prime minister has always stressed to these members of cabinet, that you ought to declare and do so in the manner in which you are required to. Those integrity committee forms and all of that you have to declare. And corruption is not encouraged by our party and government either. It does not mean that corruption does not happen. And I think therein lies the major difference between the UDP and the PUP. Under the PUP administration of some years ago, and you might ask, well, why bring that up? Because there are still many of the same players. Because John Briceño is still a major part of the party that engaged in all of that corruption and still has many of the same people around him that were engaged in that kind of corruption. That corruption was encouraged by the institution that is the PUP. Said Musa, who was the leader of the party at that time, engaged in that kind of corruption, diverted monies from Taiwan and from Venezuela and all other else, hid secret contracts, did all kinds of wheeling and dealing. The leadership of the party itself was involved in corruption. And John Briceño was no exception to that. And that's what makes the difference. In the UDP, yes, there are some elements that may have reared their heads in terms of corruption, but institutionally, as a party, that cannot be said. And under my watch, it will still be the case. And where we find those elements of corruption, we will deal with those effectively. And that is my offering to the Belizean people, that things that come up in that manner will not be tolerated. Of course, I hear you, Marlene. This is what anybody is expected to say. John Briceño will say that. And of course, you expect me as the new party leader of the UDP to say the same. But the difference is record.
Well,
the difference is record.
I agree. And I think, you know, as a part of the season, we come to expect that there will be this level of blame game. But that's why I go directly to the issue of what, if you are in the power position of the prime minister where you're leading the government, what will you do? Will you, what can you ensure or promise will be put in place? Because while the institutions do exist, I think we can all acknowledge that they have not been given the strength and power to do what they need to do, from the Public Accounts Committee to the Integrity Commission. We can go on with the Auditor General that is severely under-resourced, Contractor General. So the posts exist, and it's great that people can say that, but it means nothing if they can't execute their duties.
Well, a lot of what is there now, I think, can function. And I'm not saying that we don't need tweaking.
Do you feel that they have been functioning?
No, this is what I'm saying, that there are some elements that don't function because there is the lack of political will, and there is the lack of the ability to, let's take, for instance, the Public Accounts Committee. We have had, as the ranking member of the government on that committee, we have had some wonderful sessions of the Public Accounts Committee where we agree on what needs to take place in terms of the functions of that committee for it to work and to be more effective. We have agreed in a bipartisan way on what changes need to be made. But you have a chairman from the opposition who is half-cocked, and when he gets out of those meetings, he completely disregards, this is what really has happened, completely disregards those wonderful discussions and progressive discussions as to how we can move forward, as to how we can get more teeth to the committee, as to how we can support the Auditor General and the Accountant General in a better way. And then he comes out and he politicizes things and changes what we agreed on. He's now famous for talking about the last report of the Auditor General that we are yet to table in the National Assembly. These are the reasons, because we agreed on certain things to be put in the report, and he goes and politicizes the entire report. Those committees, and I think that is one of the major issues on a whole as it relates to these mechanisms. We don't want to politicize things. You don't want to make it be a blame game. You want to once and for all fix the mechanisms so that the political persuasion will be removed from it, the political power will be removed from it, those who are in the public service, because that is a key part of what goes on in corruption as well. Those who are engaged at the other levels of execution for the government. Take the issues that go on in immigration. Take the issues that go on in the lands department, for instance. A lot of these things feed into that corruption. And of course, whenever there's a scandal, people say, oh, it's the politician, it's the politician. And this is what I was saying earlier when I said that we have to be able to do transformation at various different levels. The levels of the politician, yes, but also the levels of our government, and in fact, the wider way in which our people operate in the country. Yeah. So for me, a key way to do that, to cut some of what is allowed to slide, is to digitize the services of the government, where things will not be able to be left up to human judgment, because that is where the corruption comes in by and large. So if a lot of our processes now are digitized, and if we're able then to put more efforts into policing those systems, including the politicians, the public servants included, then I think we will get a way farther. But in terms of those mechanisms that are now famously known to try to clamp down on corruption at the political level, I think political will change that, and bipartisan efforts on both of the major political parties, and should a third party squeeze something in there, then everybody should be put to task and asked to contribute to a system that works for all and not just works and favors one political party that is in power. Because take for instance, I have been on both sides of the shoe has been on both sides of my feet here. I spent time in opposition and I spent time in government. And it is easy for the opposition to say things. When you're in opposition, it's very easy to say things. This is why their campaign is much easier, because all they have to do is criticize the last 13 years. But it is not always what you say, it's what you do when you get into office. Well, so when it is that those very same systems suit you, you are quick to then just buy into what is there because it allows you to function easily. Being honest, being against corruption requires great effort. It requires greater effort than if you allow things to slide and you allow yourself to be deceptive. And so we have to have the kind of political will, the kind of leader who is going to say, you know what, while this is going to be a rough road, while it is not what the unions want to push you down, you have to have a very decisive leader, and one that is going to take tough decisions if we're going to fix corruption in this country. And that's what I bring to the table. So let's... Sorry, go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
So that is what I bring to the table, and I stand ready to engage with our stakeholders. And for me, that is everybody. That is something that has proven to work for me over my years as a leader in government that I've talked to the stakeholders, I've engaged with them. This is why we're able to even falsely make the claim that we quarrel so much, because we're engaged, because we have the chance to sit at the table, because the union has the right to say whatever they feel is correct and act on it. That is, to me, what the democracy of our country is all about, and the governing of this nation is all about. When you have somebody making decisions or just going with the flow and agreeing with everything and allowing the corruption to happen without making tough decisions, if that is the kind of leader you want, then I'm not that person.
Well, I wanted to shift gears because we're talking about your platform moving forward, and especially the anti-corruption platform that I know a lot of people will continue to raise questions. I think you said very clearly that the opposition is in a very different position. They are allowed to criticize what happened over the past 13 years while you must defend or clarify or shift the perspective.
I'm saying it is an easier position. Please don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying that they're in an easier position to say,
to criticize
because they were not in the shoe. But that does not mean that we will defend acts of corruption in the UDP as we go into this administration.
Let me shift gears, because I also wanted, to be able to get to the point of executing any platform, you got to win the election. And it is just, it's an unimaginable time. And everyone is trying to figure out just how we're going to have this election, how you'll be able to garner the support, build the energy that an election requires. Talk to me about how you have been working to effectively carry out this last leg of your campaign and get the energy going for election day itself.
Well, I am pretty sure that people in our party, and I believe in the opposition as well, knew long in advance of the date being announced that we were pushing ahead. In fact, we did not make it a secret that we intended to push on with the elections in November. So this, of course, allowed for a very long, although not official, campaign season. In fact, you saw where the opposition started bombarding the TV and the radio airwaves long in advance of the announcement of any official date for the election. So any entity that wanted to contest the November elections, in fact, have had a very long opportunity to start making their case. And the UDP is no exception. So that work was started a long time ago. I think the energy in our party started as well with the conventions that we held earlier. And while that is one of the positives that came out of having not one but two conventions, that we were able to every time stir that energy, that vibrancy from our party to prove that it is a machinery that is well oiled and functioning. So the spirits have been activated and have been very high in terms of the energy of our party. I think nobody will argue that the UDP has very strong political machinery for election day. It has been tried and tested many times over. In fact, we have been the most winning party since the independence of this country some years ago. So we are now moving into high gear. That movement into high gear might mean something different from what it normally means in a normal election year, because of course we're facing the situation with COVID-19. Campaigning as we knew it some years ago or some months ago even cannot be the same. And so we're doing a lot of things, but we're doing those things differently from how we were then. For instance, as the primary person leading the election charge in the party, I have had a lot of meetings with our constituency committees across the country, but these meetings are now done by Zoom. They're done from the comfort of the homes of our executive committees, and we have very passionate meetings, or meetings are sometimes 2 to 3 hours long. The only downside people complain about is that they're not able to get snacks, but they can provide those snacks in their homes. But we have a very productive meeting, and the energy is still able to be fed to our people via the technology. And in some areas where we have new candidates, of course, and people want to know those candidates face to face, we have encouraged our people to be very safe when they're venturing out. Of course, you know that we've had some struggle in this regard. Two of our 31 candidates, in fact, have tested positive for COVID, one still an active case. And we caution, in fact, when Tony Herrera, which is the current active case, made that declaration to me, I then called all of my candidates to say, listen, we've got to be very careful. You have to make sure you stick to the health protocols when you're out there, and where you don't have to be and you feel that there is an alternate route, then go that alternate route in order to connect with your people. And I think that has been very successful. In my own constituency of Colette, of course, I have a long-standing relationship with my voters, over 25 years. And so for me, it has been a campaign by phone calls mainly, but I still try to visit where I can. And people are very happy to receive those calls, and they understand fully why it is that we're not able to visit their homes in the traditional manner when an election comes around. So it's been a different campaign, and tonight, of course, we launched virtually, something that is new for the UDP as well.
It's your big handing over.
Yeah, it's a handing over, and for people who don't understand that, it is simple. It is provided for in our constitution that when it is that our leader reaches the near end of his term, that the party selects a leader-elect, and that leader-elect comes into office when it is that the term of the current leader demits. Now, there was occasion when the current leader said, well, I might leave a bit early, but there is nothing to force that, and it is entirely up to his discretion. He opted not to leave. The National Assembly is now dissolved, and so there can be no other prime minister for those who are confused with that. And so the official leadership baton is handed over tonight, and I become officially the leader of the party. And I continue the role that I had always been engaged in since being elected party leader. That is to run the affairs of the party and to make sure that we're fighting fit to face the elections on November 11th. And that job does not stop. The party leader, Mr. Barrow, continues to give his support after today, I am certain. You will hear him make that declaration in our ceremony tonight because he's an invaluable part of the party's machinery. He, of course, will continue to do his best to ensure that we win those elections and support the government as we go on into a fourth historic consecutive term.
And Minister Faber, of course, keeping on the topic of campaigning, part of that is, of course, listening to the people on the ground. And I am interested to know from your experience over the past few weeks and months, based on what the feedback is that you get from members of the public, what are some of their chief concerns going into this election, and what are your plans to address them?
Well, I suspect that is very glaring, Gavin. People have concerns about their livelihood in particular because of the strain that has been brought on by COVID-19. And I think it would be fair to say that those concerns, in fact, existed even before COVID. We have had issues, of course, of poverty, of crime and violence. These things continue, although in terms of things like murders and so on, they've been cut down because of the intermittent state of emergency and curfews and stuff like that. But by and large, we are faced with these issues. And so people want to hear how is it that we intend to continue to fight against this. For the UDP, that's a continuation. I watched as the PUPs and those who oppose us, of course, talk about, oh, this is our plan and our plan and our plan. Well, the truth of the matter is we are living the plan. The UDP has an opportunity, and we will speak about building on the legacy, and we've made it a point. I don't know how much you have observed what we have done in terms of our media campaign, but we've made the point to go back to the first term of the UDP and the second term of the UDP, and then these 3 consecutive terms on a stretch, because we want people to know, and I say unreservedly this morning, as I will later on today, that the UDP operates on a platform. We don't just go fly by night. And where people depart from that, that's fine. In some cases, in other cases where there are negatives, it's not okay, but we try to get back to our moorings. But the policies and principles that saw the Esquivel administrations of 84 and 93 succeed, and the policies that saw the Barrow administration get to this point and have succeeded in so many ways, continues to be the pillars upon which we will build and move the party. Albeit with new vision and new direction in some regards, that's what we're going to do. Yeah. So we will continue to make the fight for development for our people in particular. And as we go around, to answer your question more directly, these are the concerns that come from people. What is it that you're going to do in order to improve our lives? How is it that we can become better off as a result of all that has happened in COVID? What measures are the government going to take? How is it that you will help us to keep safe, even as we continue to battle COVID, but outside of COVID, in terms of your policy on health? How is it that you will continue to lead us in education, Mr. Faber, since you've been there for all of those years and you've led us so well? What is it that is the next step? And this is exactly what we are answering and will continue to answer. Our party will release in short order our platform on many of these areas, which is for us, again, a continuation, because while the opposition and others who are aspiring can talk and plan, we are in a position where we can do. A very easy case in point there is the comparison that I've made time and time again to show where the PUP has a plan for digitizing education that will take them 5 years. We will get a bulk of it done this year, albeit as a result of the pressures coming from COVID-19. It was something that was long started, but on a slower pace that is now expedited as a result of COVID.
Yeah. And I really want to talk about what's your plan if you get into office come November in addressing COVID. We'll tackle that in the second part of the show as we have a break coming up. But just before we do, while we talk about the presentation of your representatives, let's talk about women representation in your party and how many women are going to be standard bearers and how you feel about the level of representation in the year 2020.
Well, I would have hoped for more, but I am proud to say that we have 4 women running on our slate, and these are not just token women. We have 4 of the strongest women that I know in this country. We have, of course, Tracy Tega-Panton, who has really distinguished herself as a representative and a minister of government. Tracy has demonstrated herself, of course, long before entering the political fray. This would be her first re-election, but she has demonstrated her ability long before in the tourism industry, where she was head of BTB and I think also a CEO in the Ministry of Tourism. So she is a colleague that I am very, very pleased to present later on to the Belizean people, and especially to the people of Albert who love her dearly. I think Tracy has transitioned Albert into being a powerhouse for the UDP, and there's no way on election day that she won't deliver that seat.
Yeah. We have the 5 candidates up on the screen just as we go to the break. Would you have liked to see more women on the slate?
I am all for getting more women on the slate, absolutely, and getting more women in general in positions of power. And again, you can talk that talk, or you can put things into action immediately. I have a 5-member senior management team in the Ministry of Education, and all but me are women, and that is by my design, because I believe that women have a lot to contribute. I believe that they are, in fact, underutilized, and we need to create opportunities to give them a chance to shine. And so I am absolutely in support of more women at all levels, but especially in the parliament, be it the Senate or the national, the House of Representatives.
All right, so we got to take that break, but when we come back, we'll tackle the big virus, the big virus in the room, and about what you plan to do about it if you are elected. So we'll take that break when we come back.
Candidates be jealous now because I only get up Tracy. But
I know, blame me. It's in matter of time. We'll take that break. We'll come back in a few.
For over 20 years, Great Belize Television, Channel 5, has been the leader in award-winning local programming. We have also produced some of the best video commercials, documentaries, and live events for clients countrywide. And we continue to offer high-quality production services to maximize your advertising needs for your business or organization. From concept to completion, let us help you achieve your marketing goal by producing your commercial, documentary, graphic animation, live event, or even designing your website. Using state-of-the-art equipment and experienced personnel, we can make your ideas come alive. For more information, come see us on Coney Drive or give us a call at 223-0146 or 223-7781 or email us at gbtv@btl.net. Great Belize Productions, making great television in Belize.
And we are starting part 2 of our conversation with leader-elect of the United Democratic Party, Minister Patrick Faber. And of course, we have talked about his platform, about looking at some of the issues that the party has faced. But there is nothing bigger to discuss than, of course, the pandemic that we are in the thick of. And I wanted to start off by talking about what your immediate plan would be if you were elected in office come November. COVID brings with it its own challenges. You're looking at being able to beat the virus by detecting or quarantining, treating when treatment is available, vaccinating when vaccination comes, and then you're looking at all the other sectors that have been impacted. What will be your priority if you were elected come November 11th?
Well, firstly, let me say that when COVID presented itself to not only Belize but the world, but especially when it presented itself on the doorsteps of Belize, we thought that it would be something that would only last a few months. In fact, most of the measures that we contemplated back then was to be just for 3 months, then 6 months. And many months later now, we are finding out that in fact, we are still in it. And in fact, that we don't see an end in sight. So that has to say to us that we need to do a greater adjustment, more to now decide on measures that will allow us to coexist, if you will, with the disease. And you've heard many in position, both in government and those who oppose the government, speak in this direction, that we need now to find ways of coexisting. But in that coexistence, I think the primary concern that any government should have is, of course, to keep its people safe.
Yes.
And I think that that is the number one enemy of the fight against COVID as we speak. And so that campaign for me is very important, that we put a full press on it now. And in fact, in any new administration that comes up, that will be a primary concern. We need to follow the protocols. We need to ensure that we minimize our contact with others. We need to make sure that when we have to be out and about or at our job sites, that we do so in a safe manner. And for me, that will help in the fight against COVID in a very major way. But you're right. there are other issues that accompany that.
Do you
fight.
have any targets, though, as to what you would like to do if you are the one in the decision-making position? Whether it be more testing, whether it be going back to stricter measures, because there's a matter of living with it, but still mitigating loss of life while still keeping the economic activity going.
No, I think, I've been a part of much of the decision making, although not on the NOC. Most of what is decided on the NOC is brought to the cabinet, and as leader-elect, I have had a major say in terms of these measures, and my input has been respected, let me say, in a major way. So yeah. I can't say that I am not in agreement with the kinds of measures that we've put in place. I think we've struggled because it's new territory in terms of making decisions that are good for everybody. In fact, those decisions quite often prove to meet this disapproval of many who, of course, have a different view. But you can't make decisions to please everybody, and so for me, I am okay with the decisions that we've been making, and I intend to continue in a similar manner and a similar consultative manner to ensure that we have stakeholders participate and that we make decisions that are best for Belize. But in terms of some of the effects that have been brought on by COVID, those are the areas in which I think we need to be more creative and make some departure, if you will, from what we're doing now. And that is not a criticism. That is to say that there has to be now some kind of transitioning from planning to just to outlive COVID rather than for us to coexist with it. And for instance, when we presented an economic recovery plan, most of what we've done in that respect was with the thought in mind that COVID would eventually come to an end, and so there would be a post-COVID period. So we have to retweak things to now understand that the recovery can't wait until COVID is finished. And I will agree that much of what is in that recovery plan for the economy, in fact, attempts to fix issues that existed even before COVID, but that would now allow for elements of the economy to recover and to rebound in a way that would see them not only recover but also grow. So for me, that is what will be the difference. We now have to try to fix the issues in tourism as we open the airport, fix the issues in our hotels, and make them better ready to accept our tourists. Tourism continues to be a major industry in Belize, and I value that very much. I met with the Belize Hotel Association earlier, it may have been last week, but and shared with them our ideas for tourism. But it is not only that we're banking on tourism. I think COVID and other disasters over time has taught us that we need to be able to do other things. And so while we fight COVID, unemployment is a big issue. And so we have to make sure that there are investments happening and that we're looking for other ways of expanding the economy, maybe in ways that people can work from home. One major idea in this area, for instance, is something that now goes hand in hand with what we're doing in education to digitize education. That is to advance, to take to another level the technological services that we have to market to other countries. We are in the business of BPOs already. They provide hundreds of jobs to Belizeans, but I dare say that what we are doing in terms of those services are just the tip of the iceberg. We are at the lower level. We can train and retrain our people in order to have them take on more meaningful jobs, higher paying jobs in this service industry. And if we can do that, many of them can then work from home. We have now one of the best internet broadband systems in the world. And so this framework is there for us already. But if we can do this, people can work from home, we can fight COVID simultaneously, and then we're able to pull ourselves up, not only because of the issues we've been having with COVID, but poverty in general. So I know we don't have a lot of time for me to get into all of this detail. And in fact, our party is going to be, as I've said, disclosing or putting
your manifesto, your plan.
The plans that we have. And I'm sure that Belizeans will get much more detail of where it is we want to go.
But just in looking forward, though, because as I said before, it's a tough competing priority. It's looking at the health aspect and saving lives and keeping people healthy, but we got to keep the economy healthy as well. This is considered the greatest financial crisis since the Depression, and the recovery period at this point is simply uncertain. And that's not just for Belize, that's globally. So you're looking, as a leader of a nation, taking us through one of the toughest times imaginable. I'd say it's unimaginable. So you have to find resources to be able to ensure that our healthcare system can keep up with the demands of testing and treating. As of yesterday, Dr. Manzanero said that KHMH, for now, is at its capacity in terms of numbers of people in the unit. I know they have an extension plan to take on more people, and it fluctuates over time. So we know the healthcare system has to be beefed up. We know there's going to be a need for purchasing additional testing. We know that when the treatment becomes available and the vaccines become available, we'll have to find the resources for that as well. At the same time, we have been borrowing as much as we can to be able to supplement some of these costs. And the tourism industry is expected to rebound, but not right now. And some say maybe 2-3 years before we see where we were before COVID. So what is your plan in being able to get the economy moving, get people in jobs? And if they don't get jobs, how are you going to support them with the social programs? Because it is going to take money, and money that we just don't have.
Well, firstly, I think you're saying that there were additional borrowings, and you need to understand that much of what has been done in terms of those social programs and also supporting the health system now to be COVID ready, and that has had us be able to handle the cases that we've had so far. It was no new borrowing by and large. These are repurposing of existing loans or grants that are used for that purpose. Taking case or a move to digitize schools. It comes from existing loans and grants that were there, and I'm sure that that is the same for the expansion of the Boost program, the Pantry program, giving support to the health sector, all of that. So that is not anything outside of what existed already. But you are right in the larger sense, and in many respects, any government, any administration that comes in after November will be in uncharted territory. And so we have got to, this is exactly why I said that we cannot wait for COVID to finish. And in fact, the recovery plan needs to be the kind of recovery plan that happens simultaneously with the pandemic. In that plan, for instance, we looked at several things that would make it easier for people to do business in Belize. That's one of the major areas that could create opportunity and create jobs. People have complained about a number of things, including the tax system or land distribution system and land taxes for that matter. A number of things that allow us to be ranked very low in terms of where we stand in the world in doing business. And if we can address these things very much in the same manner that that plan outlined, we will then be able to attract some of the business that we need in this country. But we have to be careful, as I've just said, what kind of investments we attract. And when I say that, I mean we need to be ensuring that such investment comes in a way that our people will be able to work. Because if there is a pandemic and the kinds of jobs that are offered don't seem to be conducive to our people moving out and about, let's try to find those jobs that will keep them safe. And again, our education system now moving in the direction of the use of technology can set us apart from the rest of the world. Our proximity to the United States and also to our Central American neighbors, given that we are a bilingual nation, will allow us to have these opportunities. But there has got to be that drive, and that is what I hope to bring, an open and clear, improved system for people to do business in this country, so that they will then be able to click into the environment that we have here. Some of it that is already very good. I mentioned earlier the internet framework, for instance, something that is very conducive to our educational needs, but also to our economical needs and business needs in this country. So it's just a matter of attracting that. I believe firmly in ensuring that during this pandemic that we keep our public servants who are the backbone of the government employed, and that we keep them as comfortable as possible, because that helps the economy. Yeah. If our public servants are being paid and they are moving around and they are being active and they're spending, that helps the economy as well. And so while some criticize it and say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that in terms of the public service? I think that's something that we will probably have to look at.
I was going to ask, is that sustainable?
In terms of sustainability, we will have to look at it, but insofar as we can keep it going, it does contribute and help to keep our people comfortable, to keep us in a good mental place, and also to keep things moving in the economy. But will we have to have those tough sessions where we consult and we discuss and we try to find creative ways forward given the crunch? Absolutely. But that has to come. And as I've said before, this is something that I have learned. You consult with those who are involved, because when we all understand the plight of what it is we're going through, we're more likely to buy into a solution. And so we must engage collectively. I think the NOC is a good example of that, where stakeholders come together and help to make the decisions rather than just the politicians who have been tasked and who have been elected to make decisions, yes, but you cannot go wrong. You cannot ever go wrong if you try to make that decision making base a little bit wider. Not too wide, because then you'll never get anything accomplished, but certainly consult and try to push things forward.
Speaking of finding resources, one of the things that has been proposed by the opposition at this point in time, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is that we have some massive infrastructural loans that are to be executed, that they're saying is better if they are repurposed to be able to address the immediate needs of our people. A road to Caracol, for example, where tourism is not where it needs to be, costing us so much money, is going to be continued while we still have to find money, as I mentioned before, for tests and for everything else, for food pantry programs, for unemployment assistance. How do you justify this?
Well, these things are very important for our environment. What they will not look at is that these very same projects create a lot of jobs. Isn't that what we're trying to do? Accomplish
for the construction company.
But the construction companies employ Belizeans to work, don't they?
No, let me ask you. Do you think
hundreds of people, I would imagine, and it would put bread on the table, and it would prepare us, because, as I've said, we're not departing from tourism. And in fact, if there is ever an industry, I think that can bounce back easily under these circumstances, it would be tourism. Listen, we have got to remember that we have a natural advantage when it comes to tourism. Belize is, and it's not because I'm speaking to you or it is coming from my mouth, Belize is probably the most beautiful tourism product that we can ever find in the world. It is unique in many, many respects. And so we should not lose sight of what it is. We have that natural advantage. Yes, we're going through a downtime. Yes, we should try our very best to diversify and to do other things. Agriculture and selling of our digital services are two areas that immediately come to mind. But we cannot just throw away all our investments in tourism, because that continues, in my view, to be the basket that will carry us through.
But Minister, I think that you still haven't responded to the question that I'm asking. So what I'm saying is, in this time where unemployment assistance until tourism rebounds is going to be a necessity for people, the food pantry for people who are earning less is going to be a necessity for people. And these literal food on the table packages are far more urgent at this time than infrastructural work like a road that is not in constant use. So what is your justification? I hear you say, there's some people who will get jobs, but couldn't the argument be that those millions and millions of dollars will be better spent feeding more people than offering employment to just 100?
You surely are sounding the opposition's points. You remember that the opposition has long been in opposition to these projects, even when there was no COVID. So, but to answer you bluntly, the government has been doing just that. The government has been putting food packages on the tables of families under this COVID-19 situation. The government has been providing unemployment relief for people under these COVID-19 situations. So it's not one or the other. The government needs to do all of these things. And I will tell you that while there are hiccups, as is expected because this is new and unfounded territory, you cannot make the point successfully that the government sees those things as not priority, because the government has. That's where major investments and the repurposing of loans and grants, as I've said, have gone. So why not do both? Why not help while it is we can, and why not continue to prepare for better days so that we can then take advantage of what is to come in the future once we get over the hump that is COVID-19.
But let's be clear, the question is not about what has been going. I think it has helped. The question is, how do you sustain it for what is such an indefinite amount of time? There is when the vaccine is created, and there's also when Belize has access to the vaccine. So we look at 1 year or more that lies ahead, where people will still be in a very trying situation.
You ask me in one breath what it is that we will do for the future to help us recover, and then you take away all that that question poses by saying, well, let's put it all into now. Those investments help now, first of all. I repeat that, it helps now. What you diminish and you put as just a few jobs is a major contribution to the lives of that Caracol Road for the people in Kaya, the rural populations especially, leading all the way there. All that can come in the future is one thing, but all the jobs it provides now, all the provision in terms of the aggregates that will go on in there will cause people who have those quarries and trucks and all of those things make money as a result of infrastructural work. It is a practice of this administration that we have been very pleased with, because it provides jobs, but it is something that is terribly criticized by the opposition. So I expect them to say that, but you will never succeed in diminishing what benefits exist in the now by these projects. But I also highlight to you that there is benefits to come, benefits that will come, and this is a part of what we need to do. We have to plan for what is to come. The pavement of that road to Caracol, the pavement of the coastal road, for instance, again, all of these things will burst wide open developments in those areas as well, and will cause employment and recovery employment to happen as soon as we're able to get over the hump. But while the grass to grow, we can't have the horse to stop. So there has to be a simultaneous plan, which the government has executed, not without hiccups, but very successfully, in order to keep people out of the kind of dire straits that COVID-19 has been known to produce all over the world.
And Minister Faber, while we're on the topic of the economy, I do want to shift gears a little bit because it's to another issue, which is of course going to be in the forefront of a lot of people's minds. Because when some people are faced with dire economic straits, as several people are experiencing now, that is when we see increases in certain types of crimes. And a lot of people are definitely going to be interested to know what is your plan and what is the United Democratic Party's plan to tackle issues, well, a lot of the long-standing issues where crime is concerned, and also some of the new issues that have arisen in the wake of the pandemic. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about what your plan to fight crime is going to look like if it is that you're successful on the election day.
When we're successful on that election day, my platform on crime will not change. I am one who believes firmly in ensuring that we attack the causes of crime, and you just mentioned some of that. The fact that we're in a financial crunch or economic hard times as a result of COVID-19 forces people to find these kinds of actions more attractive, if you will. And that speaks to something that has happened in the wider society, poverty. So if we can attack poverty, and the best way that I know how to do that, of course, is to equip our people through education and other opportunities, employment opportunities as well, trying to help to fix the social fabric of the family and to provide support for our young boys in particular, but our young people in general, so that they won't find this kind of life attractive. Now, the truth is that is a cultural change that we all need to put our hands on the wheel to try to steer toward. However, while that is happening, I am also a very firm belief that we should improve on our crime fighting ability. And so I support the actions of the police simultaneously while we try to stamp out these causes of poverty that, as you've so rightly put, positions many of our people to find a life of crime more attractive. Improvement on the efforts of the police. I think that one of the areas that we've seen tremendous improvement is the equipping of our police force in this pandemic. But to ensure that they have the tools and the wherewithal to fight crime. And by that, I mean also working on ensuring that the police force maintains a respectable position among the citizenry of this country. That seems to be a major issue and something that I think we need to work desperately at, to raise the caliber of police officers that we have, to also ensure that they take the work that they do more seriously, to minimize the number of complaints that come against the police force, and to deal stiffly with these complaints, if you will, against police officers, to make sure that they understand that they are in highly respectable positions and that they ought to treat fairly with the citizenry of Belize. So we have to do those kinds of improvements so that confidence can be improved in terms of the police, but we also need to give them the tools to work with. In that regard, I think that the technology, again, can help us. I don't think that we have made maximum use of the technology in terms of fighting crime. We can do more in terms of providing a safe and secure environment with our cameras and to oversee what's going on. While citizens have a right to privacy, yes, that is true, but when that infringes on the safety and the rights of others, we have to consider looking at things in a different way. And so we have to make better use of the technology in order to fight some of what is going on. That may mean better forensics. It may mean, as has long been promised, something that I will certainly revive the provision of DNA services so that we can solve some of these crimes, because that too is an issue that we need to have confidence that criminals will be caught and will be dealt with the full effect of the law. I think that kind of approach, a simultaneous attack on crime from the root causes, and for us to give support to families so that this life of crime is not an attractive one, and then to deal with the policing and the judiciary so that that kind of confidence that ought to be there and that can help to minimize these actions will be done. So you can expect that coming from the new UDP administration in full effect.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I think that are to be tackled, and clearly it's not the ideal time for anybody who's aspiring to be a leader of this country, because there's so many things that need to be addressed, just given what the pandemic has caused. But take us to after November 11th. If you're able to secure a win, and you, as Prime Minister Faber, are at the helm, what are your priorities? What can the Belizean, or what would the Belizean public expect from you in terms of decisive action within that first 100 days?
Well, of course, primary among that is to form the very best team that I can form in order to tackle the very big job. It's normally a big job on its own, but given the current circumstance, it is going to be an even bigger and more difficult job. So that for me is going to be key. And I want to say that in that regard, we will try to find the very best fit. It's difficult to say because, as you know, the executive is often selected from those who are elected, and people by and large know who those folks are. But one thing that has proven very successful and that continues to remain attractive to me is to try to find the kind of talent from the wider population in a more limited way than the selection from the elected members, but to try to bring in talent via the Senate and then into the cabinet to find the very best team. I am the kind of leader who will of course, rely on those technical experts that can advise us. I think that is a trap and a loophole or a pitfall more that we've often caused on ourselves, to try to think that as the policymakers and politicians, we know it all. And so whether it is experienced persons who are stakeholders, or whether it is people who can give advice, but more importantly, people who will understand that taking advice from the technical people when we make those policy decisions would be key to forming that dream team for the nation, if you will, and will see us get off on a strong start. But once that team is formed, then we will move quickly to try to secure the confidence of the Belizean people in our efforts. That, to me, is another key thing. We have to get everybody on board with supporting our government, which is quite often a problem. There is a lot of skepticism. There is a lot of uncertainty, and this I know, especially since, again, it would be an administration of the UDP, yes, which is some level of certainty, but with a new leader who people continue to say, well, yeah, we've known Faber under these circumstances, but what will he be like as the new leader? And so some time will be spent on trying to get everybody, in very much the same way you asked me about the convention, how do we unite everybody? Working with the opposition to try to say, listen, the election is over now. Let us work together for the betterment. We're fighting this COVID pandemic. Let us work together to try to build that confidence. Now, you might say these things are trivial, these things are expected, but they're very important. It is like when a child enters a new school and we neglect to teach them the rules, and we neglect to introduce them to each other, and we just start running classes without doing the very basics. these things will come back and bite us and will take us a much longer time to fix if we don't address them in the early stages. So those are things that I would put immediately to work. And of course, there are many things that the government has in effect now that are good. And this is the advantage that a UDP administration, if it is allowed to continue, will have, that there can be the continuation of much of what is good. But I don't want people to believe that a new UDP administration will mean business as usual in some respects, where things are not working. And I have my own ideas as it relates to that, that I probably have never gotten the chance in a leadership capacity to flex, or to flesh out. And you will see those things put into effect rather quickly. You asked me earlier about my position on corruption and putting the political will to some of these things. That kind of thing, I'm sure, will be top on my priority, ensuring that, of course, we continue to make powerful decisions, effective decisions on the provision of health services for our country. I believe that we've done a good job at that, but to see where that can improve. And of course, just what I've said, to put together the best economic recovery policy, one that has already been fleshed out by and large, but to adapt it for coexistence in a time of COVID, so that we can hit the ground running within the first few days, to ensure that there is not that kind of collapsing of our economy, which some feel will be imminent if we don't make the right decisions now.
Well, I know that there's a lot more information that we will be able to see tonight as you have the virtual launch and handing over of the leadership of the party, and that happens live tonight. But we do thank you for having this conversation with us, setting the backdrop as we head into the next month before the election as to what your positions are moving forward if you are to be the next leader of our country. Thank you so much. And
I thank you to Marlene and Gavin, and let me thank Channel 5 on a whole. Yes, the launch happens, I think, on most of the major TV stations at 7:30, and I think we are live streaming on multiple media outlets as well. So we encourage everybody to tune in and to be a part of this historic event. I want to thank Channel 5 as well. You give us a hard time every now and again.
That's our job, Minister.
Keeps me on my toes, so I absolutely appreciate that. And I thank you for the opportunity this morning.
All right. And stay safe.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break, but our conversation about politics isn't over. We're going to be talking to a youth movement, or a representative of a youth movement, who they're trying to get young people out to vote. We'll have that conversation after the break, so please stay tuned.